Ginormous Joe's Broken Bark by S C Cunningham. Once upon a time, a white, huggable dog called Joe lived with a man called Nasty Nick. Nick did not deserve the love of his dog. He kept Joe on a chain in the backyard and didn't feed him properly. He never gave Joe hugs. Whenever Joe barked a loving, "Hello, Nick, can I have a hug?" Nick would shout, "Be quiet, you useless dog." Joe soon learned to keep quiet and stopped barking. One cold day, Nick threw Joe into the back of the truck, drove along the highway, and dumped him on the side of the road. "You are a useless dog. Now get lost. I never want to see you again." Joe tried to shout, "Please don't leave me," but when he opened his mouth to bark, no sound came out. He strained and strained, but there was nothing. His bark was broken. Nick laughed. "You see, you're a useless dog. You can't even bark." He drove off laughing, leaving Joe alone in the street. Joe curled up in a ditch to hide from the frightening, noisy traffic. Tears rolled down his cheeks. He stayed in the street for days with no water, no food, and no hugs. He was sad and lonely. One morning, Mr. and Mrs. Tuttle and their daughter Mary were out for a walk. They came across a big bundle of dirty white fur and sad brown eyes lying in the gutter. Mr. Tuttle approached Joe first to make sure he was not dangerous. He put out his hand and quietly stroked Joe's neck. He noticed the name written on the tag hanging from his collar. Joe gently raised his head and licked Mr. Tuttle's hand. Mary squealed with joy. "Oh, Dad, he's a big, soft, cuddly polar bear. Please can we take him home with us? Please?" A local thief had been stealing from the houses in the street where the Tuttles lived. They needed a guard dog to protect their house, so Mr. and Mrs. Tuttle decided to keep him. They scooped him up and put him in the back of their car and took him to the vet. The vet checked him over and gave him medicine. The Tuttle family loved nursing Joe back into a big, strong dog. They gave him plenty of food, walks, and lots of arm-stretching hugs. Joe and Mary became best friends. They went everywhere together. They played, ate treats, watched movies, lay on the couch, and had zillions of hugs. The Tuttles didn't mind that he couldn't bark. "He's always in the way when he sleeps. He takes up so much room when he stretches out that burglars will just trip over him," Mrs. Tuttle said with a giggle. Joe loved to sleep. He could sleep all day. He would spread out across the floor, blocking everybody's path, snoring loudly. The Tuttles got used to jumping over him. On cleaning days, Mrs. Tuttle would sweep and clean the floor around him. He didn't hear the vacuum cleaner or smell the washing powder. Joe was able to sleep through anything, anytime and anywhere. Joe dreamed of chasing rabbits. His four legs would wriggle about as if he were running. Sometimes he would bark out loud and wake himself up. He would open up his eyes, look around, wonder where the noise had come from, and fall back to sleep, smiling about chasing rabbits. Joe was so big that everywhere he went, people would stop and stare at him. Dogs would bark to him, saying, "Hello, Joe. Hello, Ginormous Joe. Do you want to play?" Joe would open his mouth, wanting to talk back to them. He would strain and strain to bark, but no sound came out. He felt useless. The other dogs laughed at him, just like Nasty Nick had. Fed up, he would put his head down in a grump and stomp off down the street. Mary understood. "Don't worry, Joe. When you are dreaming, you bark so loudly that you wake yourself up with the shock. Don't you see? This proves that you can bark. You're not useless." Joe would sigh, nuzzle his nose under her arm, and give her a big, soft hug. He loved Mary. She was always saying the right things to make him feel better. Joe often lay for hours just wondering about things. He would wonder why he could only bark in his sleep. Would he ever be a real dog? He wondered why Mrs. Tuttle insisted on picking up all his poo in plastic bags. He loved her, but it was very annoying. It took ages to find the right piece of grass to put his poo on, and whoosh, Mrs. Tuttle would swoop down, pick it up and take it away. What did she do with all that poo? Was there a humongous mountain of poo somewhere? He wondered why the Tuttles changed their clothes every day. He had one white coat for every day. It was a bit messy, but it did him just fine. One night, the Tuttles were fast asleep, and Joe was stretched out as usual, snoring on the rug at the front door. A burglar sneaked up the garden path to the house. He broke open the lock of the front door. Joe was sleeping on the other side of the door and didn't hear a thing. He just lay there snoring. The burglar pushed, but the door wouldn't open. Joe's weight was hard against it. Joe didn't feel a thing. He just kept on snoring. The burglar pushed and pushed again, but the door still wouldn't budge. Joe kept snoring. Confused, the burglar scratched his head and sneaked around the back of the house to find another way to get inside. He found an open window in Mary's room. Joe snored loudly and woke himself up. He yawned, scratched his ear, and stood up. He walked through the hallway and plunked his huge body down outside Mary's bedroom door. He liked to change position every few hours when he slept. Meanwhile, the burglar sneaked into Mary's bedroom. Mary woke up and saw a man creeping around her bed. Her heart pounded. She stayed very still under the covers, pretending to be asleep. The burglar quietly opened Mary's door and stepped into the hallway. Crash, bang, wallop! He fell over the sleeping Joe and crashed to the floor. Joe didn't notice a thing. Mary jumped out of bed and screamed, "Joe! Joe, help!" She flicked on the hall light and huddled behind Joe. Joe sleepily opened one big brown eye and wondered what all the fuss was about. Then he saw the man sprawled on the floor in front of him. It was Nasty Nick. Joe didn't know how it happened, but he jumped up as quick as a flash. He stood tall over Nick, growling like a ginormous, fierce lion. He was a superhero dog. "Is that you?" Nick looked up at his old dog. "I don't believe it. It can't be," he said with a laugh. "Not Useless Joe." Joe leapt forward and let out a ferocious bark directly into Nick's face. His gleaming white teeth touched Nick's twitching nose. There was no way he was going to let anyone hurt his Mary. Nick turned on his knees and scrambled towards the front door as fast as he could move. Joe caught up with him and gave him an almighty bite on his bottom. Nick squealed with fright. He ran out of the door and down the street to his truck. Joe stood at the garden gate and barked fiercely after him. "You are a useless man. Now get lost. I never want to see you again," he roared. The whole street heard. Mary and her parents came to the door. "Good boy, Joe. What a loud bark you have." "I've called the police," said Mr. Tuttle, pleased that he had such a good guard dog. Mary ran to him and wrapped her arms around him. "I knew you could bark. I knew it. Ginormous Joe, my hero." Everyone in the neighbourhood heard of Joe's saving the Tuttles from Nasty Nick. They were very happy when Nick was arrested by the police. Joe became a hero overnight. Now, when he walks down the street, Joe holds his head high. Everybody wants to stroke him, and all the dogs want to be his friend. No one laughs at Joe anymore, and no one calls him useless. He is the bravest, most huggable dog of all. Love fixed Ginormous Joe's broken bark. The end. Thank you for listening to the Ginormous series by S C Cunningham.